First contact, first blood. The Krivax Imperial fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, 97 warships appearing simultaneously against the backdrop of Earth's blue horizon. High Commander Drellmore stood on the bridge of the flagship Inevitable Conquest, his 4 arms clasped behind his back as he surveyed the primitive planet through the viewscreen. Tactical assessment, he inquired, voice cool and measured. Sub-Commander Vexera consulted her console. Primitive defensive systems, High Commander. Nuclear weapons, rudimentary kinetic projectiles, and minimal orbital presence. The Conquest Index rates this as a Class II acquisition. We should achieve full planetary submission within 3 standard cycles. Drellmore's mouthparts clicked in satisfaction. The Krivax Imperium had conquered 17 worlds in the past revolution around the galactic core. This Earth would simply be the 18th. His species had perfected the art of planetary subjugation, a surgical strike at major power centers, followed by systematic control of resources until the indigenous population had no choice but to surrender. Send the standard ultimatum, Drellmore ordered. Give them 1 rotation to prepare for their new existence as subjects of the Imperium. The message was transmitted in all Earth languages simultaneously: surrender or face annihilation. The Krivax expected the usual response: panic, disorganization, and ultimately capitulation. What they received instead was a unified transmission from something called the United Earth Defense Council. "This is Admiral Helena Fraser of Earth," came the response. "We acknowledge your presence and your demands. Our answer is this: Earth belongs to humanity. We will not surrender. We will not submit. If you want our world, you'll have to take it from our cold, dead hands." The bridge fell silent. Vexera turned to Drellmore, confusion evident in her compound eyes. "High Commander, this is not the expected response for a Class II civilization." Drellmore waved a dismissive hand. "Bravado. They simply don't understand the technological gap. Prepare the first wave. Target their military installations and governmental centers. Standard Conquest Protocol." As the Krivax fleet dispersed into attack formation, Drellmore allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The operation would be completed quickly, and he would add another success to his already impressive record. He had no idea what was coming. Captain Maya Chen crouched in the ruins of what had once been the Pentagon. Blood trickled from a gash on her forehead, but she ignored it as she reloaded her rifle. Around her, the remaining members of her squad took whatever cover they could find. The alien bombardment had been devastating. Precision strikes that had obliterated most of Earth's conventional military forces within hours. But the Krivax had made one critical error. They had expected humans to break. "Status report," Maya hissed into her comm unit. "Theta Squad is pinned down 2 blocks east," came the scratchy response. "Delta and Epsilon are moving to flank the landing zone. We've got maybe 50 fighters still combat effective in this sector." Maya nodded grimly. "And the package?" "Ready for delivery, Captain. Just waiting on your go." She peered over her cover at the massive alien dropship that had landed in what used to be the National Mall. Krivax troops, insectoid creatures standing over 7 feet tall, moved with mechanical precision, setting up perimeter defenses and processing centers for human captives. "All units," Maya said into her comm, "execute Operation Hornet's Nest. I repeat, execute Hornet's Nest." Across Washington, D.C., the scattered remnants of humanity's defense forces emerged from hiding. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with vastly superior technology. But they attacked anyway, converging on the Krivax landing zone from all directions. Maya led her squad forward, firing in controlled bursts. The first line of alien defenders fell before they realized what was happening. The second line managed to return fire, their energy weapons cutting through concrete and flesh with equal ease. Private Rodriguez took a direct hit to the chest and went down. Maya thought he was dead until she saw him reaching for a grenade with trembling hands. His lungs were probably destroyed. his heart likely damaged. But somehow he pulled the pin and hurled the explosive at an approaching alien before finally collapsing. "Keep pushing," Maya shouted, even as plasma fire scorched the air around her. "We need to get close enough for the package." The humans pressed forward, taking horrific casualties, but refusing to retreat. For every soldier that fell, another would pick up their weapon and continue the advance. The Krivaks, accustomed to enemies that broke and fled when faced with overwhelming force, were momentarily stunned by the ferocity of the human counterattack. On the bridge of the inevitable conquest, Drellmore watched the battle unfold with increasing confusion. "What are they doing?" he demanded. "They have no chance of victory. Their defeat is mathematically certain. Why continue fighting?" Vexra's fingers danced across her console. "Unknown, High Commander. Their behavior defies conquest projections. We've eliminated 78% of their organized military response capability, yet resistance is increasing rather than decreasing." Drellmore's eyes narrowed as he studied the tactical display. "Increase orbital bombardment. Widen the target parameters to include civilian infrastructure. Make them understand the cost of defiance." As the order was relayed, new explosions blossomed across the surface of Earth. But instead of cowing the humans, the increased destruction seemed to ignite something primal in them. Maya felt the ground shake as another orbital strike hit nearby. Half her squad was down, and she herself had taken a glancing hit to her left arm, rendering it useless. Still, they had managed to fight their way to within 100 meters of the main Krivak's command ship. "Package status," she gasped into her comm. "In position, Captain. Awaiting your signal." Maya took a deep breath. "All remaining units covering fire. Package team, you are go." From 3 different positions, soldiers emerged carrying what looked like crude missile launchers. But instead of conventional warheads, they contained something Earth scientists had cobbled together in the hours following first contact: electromagnetic pulse devices specifically calibrated to the frequency ranges used by Krivak's technology. The aliens realized the threat too late. The EMP devices detonated, washing over the landing zone in invisible waves. Krivak's weapons sputtered and died. Their communication systems went offline. Their dropship's engines failed. "Now," Maya screamed, surging to her feet, "take them while they're blind." The remaining human forces charged. What followed was brutal, desperate hand-to-hand combat. Maya found herself face to face with a Krivak's officer, its 4 arms brandishing wicked close combat blades. She ducked under its first swing and drove her combat knife upward, finding a gap in its chitinous armor. Around her, humans fought with whatever they had, rifles used as clubs, knives, even bare hands. Though outmatched physically, they attacked with such ferocity that the Krivak's line began to waver. A plasma blade caught Maya across her midsection, and she felt a searing pain as it burned through her body armor and into her flesh. She staggered, dropping to one knee, but instead of falling, she gripped her knife tighter and lunged forward, burying it in her attacker's throat. The Krivak's officer gurgled, black ichor spraying from the wound. As it fell, Maya collapsed beside it, pressing a hand to her grievous injury. Around her, the battle continued to rage. She knew she was dying, but as long as she had breath, she would fight. With trembling hands, she pulled her sidearm and continued firing. Drellmore couldn't believe what he was seeing. The humans had somehow disabled the primary systems of Ground Force Alpha and were now engaged in close-quarters combat with his troops. Despite suffering catastrophic casualties, they kept fighting. "This is unprecedented," Vexra murmured, her usual clinical detachment shaken. "Deploy reinforcements immediately," Drellmore ordered. "Full combat protocol." Additional Krivak's dropships descended toward the besieged landing zone. As they approached, Drellmore's attention was drawn to a particular human on the tactical display, a female officer who had sustained what should have been a mortal wound, yet continued to fight. He zoomed in on her biometrics. Her vital signs were failing rapidly, her blood pressure dropping, organs beginning to shut down. By any rational assessment, she should be unconscious, yet there she was, still killing his soldiers. Why? He whispered, more to himself than to his bridge crew. Why continue when defeat is inevitable? As if in answer, the dying human captain managed to pull a grenade from her belt. With the last of her strength, she hurled it at a fuel cell on the disabled dropship. The resulting explosion consumed her and a dozen Krivax warriors in blinding light. Reinforcements arrived and eventually secured the landing zone, but at a cost far exceeding any previous conquest in Krivax history. Of the original 500 troops deployed in the first wave, fewer than 200 survived. Drellmore ordered a temporary withdrawal to orbital positions to reassess. As the surviving Krivax returned to the fleet, they brought with them something unexpected: human prisoners. Not surrendered soldiers, but wounded fighters too injured to continue resisting, yet somehow still alive. Among them was a sergeant named David Keller, who had lost both legs to plasma fire, but had continued directing his squad until he lost consciousness from blood loss. When he awoke in the Krivax detention center, his first action was to spit in the face of his interrogator. "You think this is over?" Keller laughed through bloodied teeth. "We're just getting started." Drellmore, watching the interrogation remotely, felt something he had never experienced before in all his campaigns across the stars: a creeping sense of uncertainty. The unbreakable spirit. 3 months had passed since the Krivax invasion began. By all objective measures, Earth was conquered. Major cities were under alien control, governments had been dismantled, and the organized military forces of humanity had been reduced to less than 15% of their original strength. Yet the Krivax were losing. High Commander Drellmore stood before the Imperium War Council, a holographic projection from his command center on Earth. His once pristine uniform was now battle-worn, his posture less confident than it had been at the start of the campaign. "The situation continues to defy expectations," he reported, choosing his words carefully. "While we maintain technical control of 73% of the planet's strategic resources and population centers, resistance activities have increased by 42% in the past lunar cycle." The Supreme Commander of the Krivax Imperium leaned forward, compound eyes glittering with displeasure. "Explain this failure, High Commander. You have deployed resources sufficient to conquer 3 Class II worlds. How can these primitives continue to resist?" Drellmore's mouthparts clicked in discomfort. "Supreme Commander, the humans do not behave according to conquest models. They do not surrender when defeated. They do not cease fighting when victory is impossible. They do not value their individual survival over their collective resistance." "Absurd," another council member interjected. "All sentient species ultimately prioritize survival. You simply haven't applied sufficient pressure." Drellmore activated a holographic display. "With respect, we have destroyed their major cities. We have controlled their food supplies. We have executed resistance leaders publicly. Yet for each human we kill, 3 more take up arms against us." The images shifted to show recent combat footage. A Krivax patrol ambushed in what had once been Paris, an occupation center in former Beijing overrun by humans armed with improvised explosives, supply ships destroyed by suicide attacks. "They used their own bodies as weapons," Drellmore continued. "They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. And they laugh, Supreme Commander. They laugh as they die, so long as they take some of us with them." The council chamber fell silent. Finally, the Supreme Commander spoke. "You have 3 more lunar cycles to pacify the planet, High Commander. After that, we will have no choice but to implement Extinction Protocol." Drellmore's inner eyelids flickered in alarm. "Supreme Commander, I must object. A planetary sterilization would end the problem permanently." The Supreme Commander interrupted. 3 cycles, High Commander. Do not fail the Imperium." The transmission ended, leaving Drellmore alone with his thoughts. After a moment, he summoned Sub-Commander Vexera. "Bring me the human called Marcus," he ordered. I wish to speak with him. Marcus Reynolds had once been a history professor at Georgetown University. Now he was a resistance fighter, or had been, until a Krivax patrol had captured him 2 weeks ago. One of his arms ended in a crude bandage where his hand had been, lost to an alien blade during his capture. Despite the pain and the knowledge that he was likely to be executed, his eyes remained defiant as he was brought before Drellmore. "You wish to see me, Bug?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse but steady. Drellmore dismissed the guards, leaving them alone in the command center. "I wish to understand," he said simply. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Understand what?" "Why you continue." Drellmore began pacing, all 4 arms clasped behind his back. "By any rational assessment, your species has lost this war. Your armies are destroyed. Your cities are occupied. Your leaders are dead or in hiding. Yet you fight on. Why?" Marcus studied the alien commander for a long moment, then laughed, a sound that still unsettled Drellmore with its incongruity in the face of defeat. "That's the thing you bugs will never get," Marcus said. "Humans don't need a why to keep fighting. It's what we do. It's who we are." "Illogical," Drellmore countered. "All conflict must have an objective. Without the possibility of victory, continued resistance is meaningless." Marcus shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. For humans, resistance itself is meaningful. Every day we fight is a day we haven't submitted. Every Krivax we kill is a victory in itself." "But you will die," Drellmore said, genuinely perplexed. "Your species will be subjugated or possibly eradicated. Surely survival." "Survival without freedom isn't survival to us," Marcus interrupted. "Maybe that's the difference between our species. You fight to conquer. We fight because we refuse to be conquered." Drellmore's antennae twitched in irritation. "Your philosophy is irrelevant. The Imperium has decided. You have 3 of your months to surrender completely, or your planet will be sterilized." He expected fear, perhaps even the beginning of reason from the human. Instead, Marcus laughed again, louder this time. "You still don't get it," he said. "If you kill us all, you've just proven our point. And if there's even one human left alive somewhere out there in the stars, they'll never stop hunting you down. Not ever." 2 weeks later, Drellmore witnessed something that changed everything. He was conducting a routine inspection of New Washington, the administrative center the Krivax had established on the ruins of the former human capital. Without warning, resistance fighters launched an assault on the main processing facility where human captives were being evaluated for labor assignments. The attack was doomed from the start. 30 humans armed with stolen and improvised weapons against over 100 Krivax soldiers with full battle equipment. But they attacked anyway, drawing fire away from the facility. Drellmore realized too late that the assault was a diversion. While his troops engaged the attackers, other resistance members infiltrated the facility and began freeing prisoners. As alarms blared and reinforcements rushed to contain the situation, Drellmore observed through security feeds what happened next. The resistance fighters had opened an escape route, but there were too many prisoners and not enough time. Without hesitation, several of the rescuers handed their weapons to the escapees and turned back, engaging the pursuing Krivax in suicidal rearguard actions to buy the others more time. One human in particular caught Drellmore's attention, a female warrior who held a narrow corridor against 8 Krivax soldiers. She had no body armor, only light clothing, and a captured plasma rifle. As the aliens advanced, she stood her ground, taking down 3 before being wounded in the shoulder. Still, she did not retreat. When the rifle's power cell depleted, she drew a blade and charge, screaming a battle cry as she drove it into the eye of another Krivax before being cut down. But the delay had worked. Most of the prisoners escaped, melting into the ruins of the city where they would undoubtedly join the resistance. Later, reviewing casualty reports, Drellmore discovered something that shook him to his core. The female warrior who had sacrificed herself had been Dr. Eliza Chen, sister of Captain Maya Chen, whose last stand during the initial invasion had been recorded in Krivak's combat logs. Two sisters, both choosing certain death over surrender months apart. It wasn't an anomaly. It was a pattern. "They're different from anything we've encountered before," Drellmore told Vexera as they stood on the observation deck, looking down at Earth's cloud-strewn surface. "Our conquest models cannot account for their behavior." Vexera's antennae twitched nervously. "The extinction order is final, High Commander. We have only 4 solar rotations remaining before we must implement it." Drellmore was silent for a long moment. "Have you studied their history, Vexera?" "Superficially, enough to identify strategic weaknesses." "I have studied it in depth," Drellmore said quietly. "They have been killing each other for millennia over resources, territory, ideology, even differences in skin pigmentation. Their capacity for violence is unmatched among species we've encountered. All the more reason to complete the extinction," Vexera noted. "No," Drellmore turned to face his subordinate. "That is precisely why we must not. Because there is something else in their history, something equally prevalent. They unite against external threats, always. And they never, ever forget their enemies." He activated a holographic display showing the current status of the Krivak's fleet. Of the 97 warships that had arrived at Earth, only 79 remained operational. Human counterattacks, despite their technological inferiority, had been devastating. "If we sterilize this planet, we make an enemy of every human who survives elsewhere in the cosmos, and they will survive." Vexera. "Their kind already had primitive colonies on other bodies in this system before we arrived. Some escaped our initial attacks." "What are you suggesting, High Commander?" Vexera asked, her voice dropping to a whisper. "I am suggesting that for the first time in the history of the Imperium, we must consider withdrawal without victory." "That is treason," Vexera gasped. "No," Drellmore countered. "It is survival." The final assault came without warning. Somehow, the remnants of humanity's military had cobbled together a counteroffensive using captured Krivak's technology combined with human ingenuity. They struck simultaneously at 37 occupation centers worldwide, employing tactics the aliens had never encountered before. Humans in modified pressure suits rode the plasma exhaust of Krivak's dropships, attaching explosive devices before being incinerated themselves. Others intentionally exposed themselves to lethal doses of radiation so they could enter areas where the aliens had established nuclear deterrents, sabotaging them from within. Most disturbing to the Krivaks were the dead warriors, humans so grievously wounded they should not have been alive, pumped full of stimulants and pain blockers, who fought with absolute abandon until their bodies literally gave out. The Krivaks had no defense against an enemy that did not fear death, that sometimes even embraced it. In New Washington, Drellmore found himself cut off from his command staff as humans overran the administrative complex. Warning klaxons blared as emergency protocols activated. He made his way to a secure communication node, fighting through the chaos. "This is High Commander Drellmore," he transmitted to the fleet. "Implement emergency protocol, Sigma 9. I repeat, Sigma 9. Vexera's voice came back, strained and uncertain. "High Commander, Sigma 9 is an evacuation order. The Supreme Commander has not authorized." "The Supreme Commander is not here," Drellmore shouted as an explosion rocked the building. "Implement Sigma 9 immediately, or there won't be an Imperium fleet left to carry out any orders." He cut the transmission as the door to the communications center burst open. A squad of human resistance fighters poured in, led by a face Drellmore recognized, Marcus Reynolds, the former prisoner, now wielding a Krivak's plasma rifle despite his missing hand. "Looks like we caught the big bug himself," Marcus said, training the weapon on Drellmore. The Krivak's commander made no move to resist. "You should kill me quickly," he advised. "Reinforcements will arrive soon." Marcus tilted his head. "Actually, they won't. Your ships are already pulling out of orbit. Looks like the mighty Imperium is running away." Drellmore's compound eyes registered surprise. They actually implemented Sigma-9. He muttered, almost to himself. What's that? Your bug word for retreat? Marcus asked, stepping closer. For strategic withdrawal, Drellmore corrected automatically. Then, more softly, for acknowledging defeat. The human fighters exchanged glances, expressions of disbelief, and nascent triumph crossing their faces. You're surrendering? Marcus asked warily. We are departing, Drellmore replied. This world is not worth the cost of taking it. Marcus laughed. That same unsettling human laugh that still puzzled Drellmore. You still don't understand us at all, do you? It was never about whether you could take our world. It was about whether we would ever stop taking it back. Overhead, the Krivax fleet began its withdrawal, ships activating jump drives and disappearing into hyperspace. On the ground, alien forces abandoned their positions, retreating to emergency extraction points under heavy human assault. It wasn't a total victory for humanity. The war had devastated Earth, killed billions, and left technology and infrastructure in ruins. But as Drellmore had finally understood, humans didn't require a total victory. They only required that they never totally lose. As he was led away by his captors, Drellmore found himself wondering if the Krivax Imperium would heed the lesson of Earth. He doubted it. The Supreme Commander would likely brand him a traitor, clinging to the belief that more force, more ships, more destructive power would have subdued the humans. They would probably return someday, he realized, with an even larger fleet with more devastating weapons. And the humans would be waiting, just as determined, just as unwilling to yield. Some species conquered worlds. Some defended them. Humans, Drellmore had learned, did something else entirely. They never stopped fighting for them.